Ready?
Ahojte.
I want to continue our discussion on the
Chcel
question
by
and
som
answers
pokračovať s
that we've
otázkami
received
a odpovediami
relating to
ohľadne
relationships.
vzťahov.
The last time we were together
Naposledy, keď sme boli spolu,
in this format,
takto,
we began discussing the subject of
hovorili
the
sme o
Apis bull.
téme býka
I don't know
Apis.
if we will remember that. And some people were
A
unsure
niektorí,
why I had delved into that subject.
niektorí si neboli istí, prečo som hovoril o tej téme.
They felt that it was not connected to the question and
Mysleli si, že
answers,
to nesúviselo s tými otázkami a
received in the
odpovediami,
past.
ktoré robíme.
and I'd changed
A že som
subject.
prešiel k inej téme.
I think I took the following week off, or it was the camp meeting, the French camp meeting. I can't remember which
Myslím, že
one.
to bolo na francúzskom camp meetingu, alebo predtým, už neviem.
But at the French camp meeting, I made the point to say that I was continuing that subject of the
Tam
Apis
som
bull.
hovoril, že budem
And what I did
v tejto
was
téme pokračovať.
go back over that material that I discussed in this
A prešiel
question
som
and
vlastne
answer.
cez ten materiál znovu, o ktorom som hovoril
And
tu v
then I
otázkach a
transitioned
odpovediach.
from that subject to the subject of
A z tejto
homeschooling.
témy som prešiel na tému domáceho školstva.
So the subject of homeschooling was topical, not only because it's become a
Bolo to
subject
dosť
of,
taká aktuálna téma,
controversy.
pretože sa to stalo
I might
takou
even say a subject of
kontroverznou,
prophecy because of
témou,
what's happening in
ale aj kvôli
France.
tomu, čo sa deje vo Francúzsku.
In fact, if you look across
Keď
different
sa pozriete na
countries,
rôzne krajiny,
different countries in their own way have
tak svojím vlastným spôsobom
got parallel
majú
experiences
podobné
with those of the
skúsenosti
United
ako aj
States
Spojené štáty.
as we consider the role of the United States in end-time prophecy.
Keď zvážime rolu Spojených štátov
Today,
v záverečnom
Whether or not
proroctve,
you went to
či
Brazil
je to Brazília,
and saw parallels there,
tam sú
of
paralely
which there are many, both
aj
internally
vnútorné,
and
aj
externally.
vonkajšie.
If you moved over to the United
Keď sa
Kingdom,
pozrieme na Anglicko,
you can see clear
tam
parallels
sú
between the United
jasné
States
paralely so Spojenými
and what's
štátmi.
happening here in the UK. If you go to
Vo
France,
Francúzsku
you see a similar
zase
story.
podobný príbeh.
So, the fact that the issue of
To, že
homeschooling
táto
is coming
téma
up
domáceho
in
školstva
the French
prichádza
makes it a subject of Bible prophecy, in my opinion.
do
And I felt it was
témy
worthwhile discussing
alebo
that
do
topic, above and beyond the fact that
sa stáva témou
a number
ohľadne
of
uzákoňovania
families in
vo
the movement
Francúzsku.
have
Je témou
what I might call
biblického
a vested interest
proroctva.
or a personal interest in the subject. So I was actually asked a
Pýtali sa ma
question
otázku
on
ohľadne
homeschooling
domáceho
in this
školstva.
Q&A, and I consider it a
Ja to
subject
považujem za tému,
that's connected to
ktorá je
relationships,
spojená so vzťahmi,
and not just a relationship between
nie
parent
len
and
medzi
child,
rodičmi a deťmi,
but also between
ale aj
spouses.
medzi partnermi.
And to introduce that
Aby som
subject
túto
of
tému uviedol,
homeschooling, I decided to take a step
chcem sa
back
kúsok vrátiť späť
and consider the material
a zvážiť materiál,
Elder Tess had
ktorý
presented
nám prezentovala
on the
staršia
subject of the
Tess.
Apis bull. I'm sure you'll all remember
Určite si všetci pamätáte,
her perspective of dealing with that subject was that of a warrior king,
prvá perspektíva tejto témy bola toho
and how
bojovného
she
kráľa.
paralleled the experience of God's people
Taká paralela skúsenosti
Sinai,
Božieho ľudu pri
when
Sinaji,
they craft, as the Bible describes it, a golden
toho
calf,
zlatého telaťa,
and the experience of
a
God's people in the time of
skúsenosť Božieho
Samuel
ľudu
and also of John the Baptist,
a Jana Krstiteľa,
how they had
ako
transitioned
oni
from, in the words of Elder Tess,
prešli
the form
z tej formy
to, I think she may have called it the character, I'm just going
Povahe.
to call it the substance.
alebo tej podstate.
So I'm hoping
Dúfam,
everybody is
že
familiar
všetci
with
toto
that
poznáte,
logic. The logic
túto
that she
logiku,
presented that went from
ktorú
the
ona
form to the
prezentovala.
character, or the form to the personality,
Uh,
and I'm saying it from the
Vlastne
form
tá
to the
forma a duch,
substance,
alebo forma
to
a
the
podstata,
reality.
osobnosť, povaha.
And the perspective that she took,
Tá
as I said,
perspektíva,
was that
ktorú
of
ona
a warrior
zobrala,
king.
je,
That's why
že je
in the
to
period of
bojovný
Samuel
král.
they demand a king, so they can
Preto
be
v čase
like the
Samuela
world,
chceli kráľa, aby
or
boli ako svet.
worldliness, and in the same vein, with the same
A
reasoning, the same
v
logic,
rovnakej logike,
when Christ, the
keď
Messiah,
prišiel aj
comes,
Kristus ako
they
Mesiáš,
expect a warrior
tak
Messiah,
očakávali Mesiáša bojovníka.
mimicking the world's model
Napodobňovali
of what right
model
and wrong is,
sveta,
that they want to make battle with
chceli
Rome.
bojovať s Rímom.
We call it pagan Rome, but it's the
Je
same
to tá istá
idea.
myšlienka.
And just a cursory reading of Spirit Prophecy, particularly
Keď sme
the
čítali
Desire of
Ducha
Ages,
prorockého, zvlášť
Ellen
Túžbu
White would
vekov,
inform us
Ellen
about
Whiteová
their reasoning and their
udáva ten
mindset.
dôvod a
And she
myslenie
makes an important observation,
a má určité pozorovanie
which is the following.
následovné.
She says, if he had come
Hovorí,
as a
že keby
warrior
prišiel
king,
ako bojovný
the
král
type of Messiah that they
a bol by tým
desired,
Mesiášom, po ktorom oni túžili,
they would have accepted
tak by
him.
ho prijali.
And when she refers to the they, it's not just the masses,
A
she
ona
speaks about the church
nehovorí
leadership.
len o tom množstve ľudí, ale aj o vedení celej cirkvi.
However, when I looked at the
Keď
subject
som
of
sa
the
pozeral
eighth
na tú
sword,
tému Bíka
I
a
wanted
Pís,
to look at it from
ja
a
som sa na
different
to pozeral z inej
perspective.
perspektívy.
I looked at it
Pozeral
the
som sa na to z
perspective
perspektívy
of gender
pohlavia
or
alebo
fertility.
plodnosti.
And what I wanted us
Čo
to
som
see
chcela, aby sme videli,
is that as soon as you start considering the subject of
je, že keď
fertility,
začneme rozmýšľať o
it
tej
can be described in
téme
different ways.
ako božstvo plodnosti,
It can be described as
tak
life,
môžeme
and
to
death.
popísať rôzne, ako život
the
a
sun
smrť.
god, the sea god. The sun dies every evening as it is
Je
swallowed
tam
by
ten
the sea,
boh
the fish god,
slnka,
and it resurrects
boh
every
mora,
morning.
ten boh slnka zomiera
wanted
každý
us to
večer
see
a je skriesený
that
každé
This
ráno.
whole subject
Celá
golden
táto
calf
téma zlatého
can be
telaťa
considered as death and
môžeme
resurrection.
sa na ňu pozrieť ako
Hopefully
smrť
we
a
can all
vzkriesenie.
Assent to that connection, that logic. And as soon as you start
Keď toto
doing
začnete
that,
robiť,
when you start considering the
začnete
sun,
zvažovať to slnko
then the partner of the sun, if I can say it that way, would be the moon.
vlastne ten partner
And we
toho
know that
slnka
the
je
sun
mesiac.
has its own glory,
Ten mesiac
and the moon is a
nemá
reflection
svoju
of
vlastnú
the sun's
slávu, je
glory.
iba
And so you have this
odbleskom z tej
symbiotic
slávy slnka.
relationship between the sun and the moon, between the day and the night, between life and death, between death and resurrection. All of these
Všetky
ideas, these
tieto
concepts are
myšlienky a
variations
koncepty
on the theme.
sú variáciou jednej
of
témy.
Two things forming
A to je
a
to, že
whole,
dve veci
two things forming
tvoria
a
jeden
union.
celok, jednotu.
The sun to rule the day,
Slnko
the moon
vládne
to rule the
dňu
night.
a mesiac
A
vládne
day
noci.
is a complete day is night, and
Ten,
I call it light.
ten úplný
So,
deň je vlastne
when we
deň
start
a noc,
thinking
aj tma,
about
aj svetlo.
This whole
Celý tento
modeling
model
of pagan
tejto pohanskej
theology,
teológie
we see it's based upon this idea of
je založený
duality.
na tej myšlienke
It can be
duálnosti.
described in different ways, in different cultures,
Rôznymi
different
spôsobmi
time
sa to v
periods.
rôznych kultúrach ako
and it
prejavuje.
doesn't take any stretch of the
Nemusíte veľmi
imagination
naťahovať
to go
svoju
from
predstavivosť,
these two entities that form a
aby ste
whole,
videli, že tieto dve zložky tvoria jeden celok.
that you go right back to the story of
Keď
Genesis
pôjdete do
2,
Genesis 2,
where two
tam sú dvaja
people
ľudia,
become
ktorí sa
one
stanú jedným
flesh.
telom.
And therefore, from these different forms,
Takže
whether
z
it's
týchto rôznych
night and day,
form,
light and dark,
um, foriem.
death and resurrection,
Máme tu smrť a vzkriesenie,
sun and the
deň a
moon,
noc,
you get
slnko
to
a
the place
mesiac.
where you see this singularity, this single entity can be described as two beings.
Vidíme, že
Man
táto jedna
and woman.
jedna osobnosť alebo osoba môže byť popísaná ako dve bytosti.
This becomes an important
A toto sa
concept
stane
not
dôležitým
only
konceptom
in pagan
nielen v
religion,
pohanstve,
but also in the
ale
Judeo-Christian
tiež aj v
religion as well.
židovsko-kresťanskom náboženstve.
And it's not that I'm trying
Ja
to
sa
say
nesnažím
that
povedať,
there's pagan religions and there's the true
že sú
religion,
pohanské náboženstva a
and one is
pravé
right and one is
náboženstva a
wrong.
jedno je nesprávne,
All I
jedno
want
je
us to
správne.
see
Ja len
is
chcem,
that
aby ste
they
videli,
become parallels to
že
one
oni
another.
sú si vzájomne paralelné.
The terminology that we would use today would be compare and contrast. You can see
My používame porovnanie a kontrast a vidíme, že tieto pohanské náboženstva
have the same
majú
model
rovnaký model
as the Hebrews, as the
ako
Christians,
Židia,
whatever way
kresťania.
you want to describe it. When a man and woman
Keď
come
muž a žena
together,
sa spoja,
when they're married,
keď
the
sú
Bible talks about it
manželia,
that way, they become one
stávajú sa
flesh.
jedným telom.
So if you were to think about a
Takže keby ste,
man, you cannot think of a man in
keď
isolation.
nemôžete rozmýšľať o
woman,
mužovi
and
ako
vice versa.
samotnom, k nemu vždy
Therefore, if
patrí
you think
žena.
about this golden calf, you cannot think
Oni
about
keď
it in isolation as a
robili
single
to zlaté
entity,
tela,
because
tiež
it
o
is
ňom
a
nemôžeme rozmýšľať
representation
ako o
of
Bohu
more
jednom.
than one thing. It's two things, and
To
those
sú
two things merged
dve veci
together
spojené v
to
jednom.
become one. We
Videli
saw,
sme,
I'm hoping that we all remember
ak si to
this,
pamätáte snáď,
that initially these religions were
že
very
tieto
simplistic,
náboženstva boli pôvodne
straightforward.
veľmi jednoduché.
just like the
Tak
true
ako
religion,
aj skutočné
Christianity, if I can say it
náboženstvo.
that way.
Kresťanstvo.
In heaven it was all very simple, very
To všetko veľmi
straightforward.
jednoduché, jasné.
There was God.
Bol Boh.
We would call that God the
My by sme ho
Father.
nazvali, že to je
They would
Otec.
just perhaps call him the King. And there was the covering
Potom
cherub,
bol ten
Lucifer,
cherub,
Christ.
Kristus, najvyšší
And
cherub.
everything was straightforward until something happened
Až dokým sa niečo
when they were
nestalo,
confronted with
keď boli konfrontovaní
a strange
s nejakou
reality.
zvláštnou realitou.
A reality that they had never conceptualized or been confronted with
Realita, s
before.
ktorou neboli konfrontovaní
And that was
predtým.
That God was
A
not
to bolo
a
to,
singular,
že Boh nie je
I'll call it a personality,
jedna
I'm not sure
osoba.
what to call it, being or entity, but we'll just call it a
alebo jedna
personality.
osobnosť.
God was not a singular personality. There was God and there was
Bol
another
Boh a bola
being.
tu ďalšia
In the
bytosť.
framework of the Bible, the way those two
To, ako
personalities,
tieto dve osobnosti sú dané do rámca v Biblii,
Father and
je Otec
Son.
a Syn.
So suddenly, this whole religion
Zrazu
becomes more
celé
complex.
toto náboženstvo sa stáva komplexnejším.
Not only
Nielen
that,
to,
Solomon tells us that there's a time of war,
Šalamún
a
nám
time of
hovorí,
peace,
že
a time
čas
of
vojny a
happiness,
čas
a time of
pokoja,
tears, a time of life, a time
čas
of death.
šťastia,
So you
čas
see all
hnevu.
these comparisons
Vidíme tu
between
všetky tieto
these
porovnania
extremes, these two
medzi
sides,
týmito dvoma
which
extrémami.
always come in couplets or pairs.
To vždycky prichádza
And
v
thus,
páre.
when you get this bull, this singular animal,
No a keď tu
and
máme
it begins
tohto
to
býka,
become
toto jedno
a
zviera,
physical representation of God,
ktoré sa stáva fyzickou
You quickly
reprezentáciou
that
Boha,
this bull has to, by its very nature, take on a more complex
my
role.
vieme, že tento Boh ich
It
musí
cannot just be
zohrávať
considered as
komplexnejšiu
a
rolu
singular
v tej svojej podstate.
entity. Now they would have chosen this bull, as Elder Tess has described a number of times, I think,
Staršia
by its characteristics, the physical characteristics of
popisovala
a
vlastne
bull.
tie vlastnosti býka.
We might consider it
Už to robila viackrát, akože silný,
courage,
odvážny,
bravery, but also this
ale
bull
taktiež
will have other
má iné
characteristics which
vlastnosti,
may not be the initial ones that they thought about when they selected
ktoré
the
nie sú
bull.
tie, na ktorými rozmýšľajú, keď ich prvýkrát napadne
characteristics of
slovo
this
bík.
idol that sometimes
Niekedy
are not inherent in the actual physical animal itself.
Teraz som
And so it takes
nepochopila.
on this esoteric representation of
Táto
God, which isn't true
ezoterická reprezentácia Boha
the animal, the physical animal
nie je
itself.
úplne pravdivá voči tomu samotnému zvieraťu ako takému.
So this
Takže
bull,
tento bík
over time, begins to represent more than just a single
začína
facet
reprezentovať
or character
viac
of God.
ako len tú jednu časť
It
Božej
takes on
povahy,
other personality
ale má aj
traits of
iné
God.
vlastnosti Boha.
And that can be described in one
A
of
to
two
sa dá
ways.
popísať
You can just say God has different
dvoma spôsobmi.
personality,
Môžeme povedať, že Boh má
or
inú
you can
osobnosť,
say there isn't
alebo
just
môžeme
one God,
povedať,
there are
že to nie je
multiple
iba
gods.
jeden Boh.
And that's
Že
the
to je
methodology
božstvo.
or the mindset of, we'll just say, the
Toto je
Grecian
myslenie
religion,
toho
where there are many
toho
gods,
gréckeho myslenia, že je veľa bohov.
and we might find that
Môže nám to
offensive, we might find it
prípadať nechutné
disgusting
alebo
as Christians,
takým opovrhnutia
pagan,
hodné
if you like,
ako
but all I
kresťanom.
want us
Ale
to
chcem, aby
see
ste videli,
is that the way they
že to,
describe
ako
who
oni
God is
popisujú to, že kým Boh je,
can be done either through a singular God with different
buď môžu povedať, že
personalities,
je to jeden Boh s
or
viacerými
multiple
vlastnosťami,
gods who
alebo že sú to
interact with one
viacerí
another.
bohovia, ktorí medzi sebou majú nejaké vzťahy,
I want to
interakciu.
remind us
Chcem vám pripomenúť
of what the
o
Bible
tom, čo
says
hovorí Biblia.
I can find the verse.
Ak to nájdem.
I can't find it, I'll just paraphrase.
Neviem to
and someone
nájsť,
can
ja
find
to
it for me.
parafrazujem, skúste to nájsť vy.
I can't find the verse, but it's the verse that says that parents
Tam sa píše, že rodičia
shall be as gods
budú
to
ako
their
bohovia
children.
svojim deťom.
Maybe someone can find it and
Ak
Post
to
the
môžete
verse up.
nájsť a poslať mi to.
okay, I'm going to
Idem
move on.
ďalej.
Someone can
Môžete
post
to
the verse
poslať
up,
do chatu.
So the only reason I
Dôvod,
mention
prečo
that
to spomínam,
is as soon as you start considering
je,
that
že keď
parents
začnete
are to be God to their
zvažovať to,
children,
že rodičia
is
majú byť
that
ako
two
bohovia
gods
svojim deťom,
or one
to je
God?
jeden boh alebo dvaja bohovia.
Just something for us to consider.
To by sme mali zvážiť.
I don't think so. Okay. If I can't find it this week or no one else can, I'll search it during the week and discuss it next week. So the point I
To, čo
wanted
som
to
chcel
make was
povedať,
that even the Bible talks about gods in the plural.
je, že aj
plurality.
Biblia hovorí o pluralite.
So what we've discussed is the fact
Hovorili
that
sme
this
o tom,
apis
že
bull then
byt
becomes
a
the
tým sa
subject
stáva témou
of the relationship between a
vzťahu
man and a
medzi
woman.
mužom a ženou.
And the reason why I wanted
Dôvod,
to
prečo som chcel
consider or discuss
o tom
that
hovoriť,
is because of the cultural setting in which all of this is taken place.
je, že táto kultúra, kde sa toto celé odohráva,
I've discussed at length at different camp
hovoril
meetings
som na rôznych camp meetingoch o tom,
that when God looks at Israel,
keď sa
ancient
Boh pozerá
Israel,
na staroveký
time period of
Izrael
Moses, and he either counts the people or punishes the people,
a trestá ľud,
too
príliš
often
často
we look at
pozeráme
this
sa na to,
history, these
na tieto
verses,
dejiny,
from the mindset of the 21st
toho
century.
myslenia
When
21.
the Bible says
storočia.
that the people sinned at Kadesh Barnea, and the only people that survived
Biblia hovorí, že
that
jediní, ktorí prežili,
punishment was Caleb and Joshua, and everyone else
boli vlastne Kaleb a
died before they entered into
Jozua a
Canaan.
všetci ostatní zomreli pred vstupom
tend to
do
think
Kanánu.
that was every person who was over the age
My
of
si
20.
myslíme, že všetci nad 20 rokov
And yet there
zomreli,
is clear biblical
ale
evidence,
máme jasný
if you
biblický
look
dôkaz,
carefully, which we have done at previous
to
camp
sme
meetings,
hovorili predtým,
that it was actually only referring to the
že
men.
vlastne tu sa hovorí len o mužoch.
Only the men were counted to have
Len muži boli počítaní,
committed the sin
že
in the
koľko
first
zomrelo.
place. Those men who were over
Tí,
20,
čo mali nad 20,
and therefore the punishment was only
dostali ten trest
attached to the men.
a ten trest sa
It
týka
could well
len
have
ich.
been women who had entered into Canaan that were over 20 at Kadesh Barnea. That was
To
the
bola
point
tá vzbúra
that I
v Kadeš
made.
Barné.
And it's the same issue when you go to Deuteronomy 20,
Keď pôjdete
21,
do 5.
22.
Mojžišovej 20,
The whole
tam je tá
subject
istá
of Deuteronomy
téma.
22 verse 5 is not about whether or not women can wear
V
trousers
5.
or
Mojžišovej
not.
22.5 sa nehovorí
The
o tom,
subject
či
is
žena môže
the
nosiť
role in
nohavice alebo
society
nie, ale
of
tam
men and
určuje tú
women.
rolu v spoločnosti žien a
That
mužov.
women are not meant to take on the role of
Ženy
men.
nesmeli na seba brať rolu
And
muža.
if I can say it, which is a very sexist perspective, of
To je
course,
samozrejme
men cannot be
sexistická perspektíva a muži nemôžu byť
fearful. In the UK, we call it chicken-hearted.
nemôžu byť takí
Someone
mäkkí.
who would run away at
Muži
the
nemôžu
slightest
byť, nemôžu
battle
sa
cry.
zlaknúť, keď príde
Men
vojna.
would have to be brave,
Musia byť odvážni.
fearless people. They were not meant to be fearful and run away and expect other people
Oni
to do
nemohli
their fighting
utiecť a očakávať,
for
že bude
them.
niekto bojovať za nich.
It was a great lack of trust on their part for them to do that. If you read Deuteronomy
Ak by to
chapter
spravili,
20,
nedôverovalo by sa.
Moses discusses this
O tom
subject.
hovorí
He gives
5.
people
Mojžišova 20.
a clause about what they can or cannot do because of fear.
A tam to bolo o tom, čo ľudia mohli a
But then
nemohli
he
spraviť
counteracts
kvôli
that,
strachu.
if I can say it that way, in Deuteronomy 22, two
A o
chapters
2
later.
kapitoly neskôr,
In chapter 20 he says, if you're a man and you're scared,
v tej 20. sa píše,
to
ak ste
battle,
mužom a bojíte sa ísť do
in
vojny,
parenthesis, because you don't trust
v
me,
zátvorke,
ye
lebo mi
God,
nedôverujete,
then stay
tak
at home
zostaňte doma
and don't
a
fight.
nebojujte.
Two chapters later,
O 2
he says,
kapitoly neskôr hovorí,
if you're willing to read
ak
it
to
this way,
ste
which is
ochotní
how I
takto
understand it,
čítať,
if a man that you
keď
know
poznáte muža,
is too
ktorý sa
scared to go
príliš
to
bojí
fight
ísť do boja, do vojny,
in war, a woman cannot take his place.
žena ho nemôže nahradiť.
I think that's the essence
Myslím si, že
of chapter 20. And its
toto
primary
je tá
application.
hlavná aplikácia
That
tej
if a man
20.
decides not
kapitoly,
to go to war because he's
že ak sa
fearful,
muž rozhodne
and
neísť
he's
do vojny,
fearful
lebo
because
sa
he
bojí
doesn't trust God,
a
a
nedôveruje Bohu,
woman is forbidden
tak
to
žena
take
nemôže
his
sa postaviť
role,
na jeho
his
miesto
place.
a hrať jeho rolu.
However we use that verse, or
Akokoľvek
Christians have used that verse
použijeme
in
tento verš, alebo
after
kresťania ako ho použijú,
generations, is their own affair. Ellen White uses it in her way, and
Ellen
other
White
people
to
use it in
používa
their
iným
own way.
spôsobom.
I'm saying that my understanding is that's the original intent of
Ja hovorím, že
that passage.
toto je
when you understand
moje
it
porozumenie toho
contextually.
pôvodného zámeru.
What that shows us
To, čo nám to ukazuje, je,
that in this
že v týchto dejinách,
when you start considering the
keď začneme rozmýšľať o Bíkovi Apis
and the relationship between men
a
and
vzťahu
women,
medzi mužmi a ženami,
what we need to
čo musíme vidieť,
is
je,
that this relationship between men and women is not one of
že
equality.
tento vzťah medzi mužmi a ženami nie je vzťah rovnosti.
We'll call it headship. That's the term
Funguje tu vlastne
that
to
Christians tend to
vodcovstvo
use.
muža.
We could call it
Môžeme to
sexism
nazvať sexizmus,
or misogyny or
alebo
chauvinism.
šovinizmus.
There are many terms that we could use. Some are more ugly than
Je
others.
mnoho pojmov, niektoré sú
But
škarečšie,
the
viac a
sanitized
menej.
word that we use is, as I say, headship. It's like human
Je to
trafficking.
ako obchodovanie s ľuďmi.
We tend to sanitize by calling
Keď
it
chceme to
dowry,
nazvať nejako krajšie,
where
povieme, že to je veno.
people, women, are persuaded
Ženy
that
sú presvedčené,
if they
že
get a good
keď
dowry,
je za nich
it
dané
means that they
veľké
have a lot
veno,
of
tak
self-worth.
majú veľkú hodnotu.
And what they are beguiled into believing is this lie.
A to je
that in
lož,
fact
ktorej
there's
veria.
this evil practice, headship,
Je to praktika,
dowry, which they have now bought into,
vlastne nadvlády muža iným
which I'm
spôsobom.
hoping people in the movement can see
Dúfam, že všetci v hnutí
is really pretty
vidíte, že táto prax
vile and
je
ugly.
škaredá.
So I want to
Takže chcel by
summarize.
som to zhrnúť.
You start off with a God.
Začnete s Bohom,
You need to represent that God in some
ktorého
kind of physical
potrebujete
form.
reprezentovať v fyzickej forme.
Whether or not you go to the
Či pôjdeme
literal
do doslovného,
or no, let me not say the literal or the spiritual. Whether or not you go from the
či
true to
pôjdete
the
od
false,
tomu
from the pagan
skutočnému
to the
k
true religion,
nepravdivému,
you have to represent this
musíte
God in some
reprezentovať
kind of physical
tohto Boha
manifestation.
nejakým fyzickým spôsobom.
And what is
Čo
curious
je
is even though you may be able to produce many verses that say you're not supposed to create God in any kind of
je
image,
veľa veršov Biblii, ktoré
of the
píšu, že si
commandment
nemáme
teaches
zobrazovať
that,
nejako Boha,
that's the very thing that God
ale
does.
pritom
He
je to
creates
presne to, čo
an
spravil
image
Boh.
of
On
himself.
spravil obraz
In the
samého
time of
seba.
Moses, we would call it the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud.
Zobrazil sa v oblaku, zobrazil sa
If you
v
move
ohni.
forward, maybe 1500 years, that kind of number. No, probably less than that. Maybe 1,000 years. A little short of that. And you get to the time of
O 1000
Christ,
rokov neskôr
then we all know that this spiritual God, this
vieme,
spiritual
že
being,
tento
is going to be
duchovný Boh
manifested in
sa
human
zobrazil
form,
v
in
ľudskej
flesh.
forme.
And that is not a minor point. In fact, that is the
Toto nie je malá
cornerstone
vec. Toto
of
je uholný kameň nášho náboženstva.
the fact that God does
Boh
manifest
zjavuje
himself
samého seba
in
vo
physical
fyzickej
form.
forme.
It becomes a
Je to
necessity,
potrebné
the scriptures tell us, that we are saved
na to,
for him to become
aby nám
human.
povedal, že sme zachránení, keď on sa stane človekom.
So, this idea
Takže táto
that
myšlienka
God takes
toho,
on a
že Boh na
form,
seba berie nejakú fyzickú podobu,
I don't want to argue as being right or wrong.
Ja-
I'm just saying it's
ja teraz
necessary.
neposudzujem tú správnosť alebo nesprávnosť
Pagan
toho,
religions
ale je
do
to
it.
potrebné.
The true religion
Robí
does it.
to skutočné
it's,
náboženstvo a robí to aj
pillar of
nepravé
cloud,
náboženstvo.
or whether it's God coming
Či-
down as an angel
Či je
speaking
to ako
to
anjel
Abraham,
schádzajúci, teda
or
Boh ako anjel
whether
schádzajúci
it's
k Abrahámovi,
the Messiah,
alebo
Christ,
Mesiáš
coming down.
ako Kristus.
And in fact, when he comes
Keď-
down a second
Keď
time
príde druhýkrát,
after visiting the Father on Sunday, the day of his resurrection, he proves his physicalness by eating food in front of the
keď
people,
príde vlastne
and
potom,
telling
ako
them
bol
to
vzkriesený,
touch him.
tak preukáže tú svoju fyzičnosť tým, že
I
sa
want us
naje
to
so
become
svojimi
comfortable with
učeníkmi.
this idea that we shouldn't shy away and we shouldn't
Nemali by sme
be
byť
nervous
nejaký
about this whole
nervózni z
idea
tejto
of a
myšlienky,
physical representation of God. Point one. Once you do
z
that,
tejto
you
fyzickej
begin to see how
podstaty Boha.
complex God is.
A
These images begin to take on different forms,
Boh je veľmi
different
komplexný.
manifestations of
On má
characteristics.
rôzne prejavy, má rôzne
And
vlastnosti.
A convoluted logic, if I can say it that way, maybe just a complex logic, you get to the place where this bull can represent two beings, two personalities, male
Tento
and
bík môže
female,
zobrazovať dve bytosti,
man and
muža
woman.
a ženu.
Now, when you get a representation of man and woman in that
V tých
history
dejinách
as this bull, you can't
nemôžete
separate that
rozdeliť
from the culture in which you live. And it's absolutely clear
tú kultúru, v ktorej
that the
žijú,
culture in which they live, whether you go to a
či to
pagan
bolo
religion or the true
pohanské
religion,
náboženstvo
has this idea
alebo
behind
židovské
it,
náboženstvo, túto
which is
myšlienku
that
tam malo.
a
A to je
man
to, že
is over a woman.
muž je
They
nad
have
ženou.
different roles
Majú iné roly
in the family,
v rámci rodiny
in
aj v rámci
society.
spoločnosti.
When there's a problem,
Ale je tu problém
in the
v
church,
cirkvi.
it's not the women that are going to come together. It's the elders.
To nie sú ženy, ktoré
Using
sa
the terminology
stretnú, to
from
sú
the
starší
scriptures.
zboru.
When there's going to be a
Keď
judgment
treba
made,
niečo rozsúdiť,
not women that will make
ženy
that
to nesmú
judgment, but
rozsúdiť,
it's going to be the
to
priests.
musia byť
The
kňazi.
priests are all
A
male.
všetci musia byť muži.
So there are so many
Je
models
veľmi
that
veľa
show
modelov,
us
ktoré nám ukazujú,
that this idea of
že táto
headship
myšlienka
is
vodcovstva a
built into
nadvlády muža je
society and therefore it's built
budovaná
into
do
the model
spoločnosti
of the
a je
Apis
teda aj
bull.
vbudovaná do modelu byka
In
Apis.
fact, it's these very models, these arguments that conservative Adventists
Tieto
use
argumenty, ktoré používajú
defend
konzervatívni adventisti
headship.
na to, aby
And if
obhajili
they haven't thought through it
toto
that
vodcovstvo
carefully, at least
muža,
to defend the fact that women cannot be pastors
tak sú to
or
práve
elders.
tieto argumenty.
And the logic that
Hovoria,
they
že ženy
use,
nemôžu byť
which I
kazateľky,
think we
nemôžu
all
byť
are familiar
staršími,
with, is that if you go to the Old
lebo v starom
Testament,
zákone
all the priests,
všetci
which are
kňazi
all the spiritual leaders,
sú
were
muži.
all selected to be male. So they're using that
Používajú
argument, that
tento
logic,
argument.
the very one taken from this 3,000-year-old cultural
Ten je starý už 3000 rokov.
anomaly, if I can call it that situation that we
To je
find ourselves
situácia, v
in.
ktorej sa tá
They
kultúra
think that
nachádzala.
was the right societal culture because God gave it
Boh
to
nám to
us,
dal,
and therefore we are to
tak to
perpetuate
musíme
it right
zachovať
into the 21st century.
aj v 21. storočí.
And the reason why
To sú
this
tie argumenty.
becomes
Dôvod, prečo
important,
toto je dôležité,
in my opinion, when it comes to
čo sa
homeschooling,
týka domáceho vzdelávania,
is
je,
that the way almost all
že to,
families
ako väčšina rodín,
that I have
ktoré
ever
som
met
kedy stretol,
that
ktoré
homeschool
vzdelávajú doma,
on the grounds of principle of
z
following the
princípu,
direction
kvôli
of
tomu, že
God
chcú nasledovať
will
nariadenia Božie,
always
tieto
do
rodiny
so
to takmer vždycky
from a
robia v
headship
tomto
model.
modeli tej nadvlády muža.
because the same material that talks
Ten
about
istý materiál, ktorý
homeschooling
hovorí o domácom
tends to be the
vzdelávaní,
same material talking about inspiration
tak ten
the
istý
same
materiál
material
hovorí
tells us how
aj
families
to,
are
ako
supposed
majú
to run,
fungovať rodiny.
that the father is the
Že
priest of the
otec je
household,
kázateľ domu,
that he has the sterner qualities and that the mother has the
že on
softer
má tie
qualities,
silnejšie
and
vlastnosti
that
a
stern and soft
matka má tie
qualities
jemnejšie
then
vlastnosti.
merge and
A oni
balance
sa
one
musia
another out,
splynúť a navzájom sa vyvážiť.
and lest you might be deceived, that is not yin and yang,
Toto nie je yin a yang,
which I'm sure all of us would find
to by nás
offensive, but
urazilo,
that is straight from
ale toto vyťahujem
inspiration
z
that talks
inšpirácie.
about the sterner and the gentler side of
Tam
two
Ellen
people
Whiteová
that
hovorí o
form
tých
one
hrubších a jemnejších
entity,
vlastnostiach mužov a žien, ktoré sa majú
and
medzi
they,
sebou
as
splynúť
I say, balance one another out.
alebo vyvážiť.
This is the model that Ellen White gives to us.
Toto je model Ellen Whiteovej.
And without careful
Bez toho, aby
consideration,
sme
careful thought,
opatrne zvážili,
I want us to see how easy
chcem, aby
it
ste
is
videli, ako je jednoduché
to not realize
neuvedomiť
how
si,
offensive and how wrong those
aké
models are
nesprávne tieto modely sú
in the dispensation, I want to say, of truth.
v období
Or
pravdy.
you might not call it the dispensation of truth because we'd say truth is always
Pravda
there.
tu bola
Let's call
vždy,
it the dispensation of the
Ale môžeme to
gathering
nazvať, že je to obdobie
or the
zhromažďovania
dispensation of the increase
a
of
rastu
knowledge.
poznania.
In that
V tomto
dispensation,
období
things that were practiced
veci,
in the
ktoré sa
past
praktikovali v
cannot
minulosti,
just be brought
sa už
forward
nemôžu
without careful scrutiny.
teraz
And
privádzať
too many of us
bez
have done that.
nejakého opatrného skúmania. A toto si neuvedomujeme.
Following the camp meeting, where I spoke at length
Na
about
camp meetingu som
homeschooling,
veľa hovoril
many
o
people have,
domácom
I
školstve
think, got to
a mnoho ľudí
a place where I think I have been
ma asi
misunderstood.
nesprávne pochopilo.
It's not my
Nebol
purpose
môjim zámerom
to destroy or
nejako
to denigrate
zhodiť alebo
homeschooling
zničiť domáce vzdelávanie
and to promote the
a
public school
propagovať
system.
verejné školstvo,
Like, I
systém
guess
verejného
many of you,
školstva.
I've been through the public schooling system
Ja som chodil
and I know
do školy
many
a mnohí z
people
vás tiež.
who have, I don't mean obviously friends and families, I mean people who are Christians in
Mnohí
the movement.
kresťania chodili do škôl.
And there are many sad and sorrowful
Je
stories
mnoho smutných
of
príbehov,
the
tých
experiences that people
skúseností,
have had in
cez
the
ktoré
public
ľudia museli prechádzať.
education system. So it's not my
Nie je
purpose
môjim
to promote
zámerom
one and denigrate
jedno vyzdvihnúť
the
a
other.
druhé zhodiť,
But what I wanted
ale
to do
to, čo
in
som
talking
chcel
about
spraviť,
this
keď som o
issue
tom hovoril,
is for us to
bolo, že
realize
som chcel, aby ste si
that some of the
uvedomili,
arguments, some of
že
the
niektoré
models
modely
that we
a
are
argumenty,
using
ktoré
to
používame
promote
na propagovanie
homeschooling
domáceho
is
školstva,
based upon,
sú založené
I want to call it flawed
na
logic.
zlej logike,
If you don't want to use that idea, at least
ktorá
outdated
už je
ideas of social norms.
zašla, zastarala.
So much homeschooling, too much
Príliš veľa
homeschooling
domáceho
is built
školstva
around a model
sa
of
deje okolo
headship
tohoto modelu
where fathers and mothers and therefore the children
vodcovstva,
follow
nerovnosti
sexist,
a ženy potom preberajú
outdated norms
sexistické,
of what is right and wrong.
neaktuálne normy a
And
modely.
that's one of the most problematic
Toto je
things that
najproblematickejšia
you have to
vec,
confront
ktorá nás konfrontuje
when you deal with the subject
pri
of
domácom
homeschooling.
školstve.
And if there's something that the public education system can teach us,
Niečo, čo nás môže
It's
naučiť
the-
verejné školstvo,
that is a wrong model.
je, že toto je nesprávny model.
And I wanted people to take an honest
Chcel som, aby
frank
ľudia
view
sa úprimne
of their thoughts
pozreli
and
na tie
ideas
svoje myšlienky a názory
about how they
o
homeschool.
tom, že
their
ako a
children.
prečo robia tú domácu školu.
And that was the connection
To bolo
between
prepojenie
the APIS bull,
medzi tým
between
výkom APIS
relationships that we
a
have
vzťahmi,
one with another as
ktoré máme
adults,
medzi sebou ako dospelí.
and the whole
A
homeschooling
celý ten
model.
model domáceho školstva.
How easy it
Aké je
is
jednoduché
to warp and distort the mind of a
zničiť
child
myseľ malého dieťaťa,
using, I want to call
používajúc
it these outdated ideas
zastaralé
or
názory a
principles.
princípy.
I'm going to give people an opportunity to ask
Dám
something
ľuďom možnosť,
about this issue
aby
before
ešte mohli dať nejaký komentár k
I
tomuto,
wanna move on to
predtým ako
something
pôjdem k ďalšej téme.
new. People have already made comments as I've been speaking.
Sú tu nejaké komentáre?
So unless someone's got a
Ak
specific
nemáte nejakú
question,
špecifickú otázku,
I think people are talking about their own personal experience one way or the other. Okay, so I'm going to move
Takže idem
on
ďalej.
and deal with some questions on a
A pozriem sa na ďalšie otázky, čo ste mi
different
poslali.
subject. Still connected to relationships,
ohľadne
but moving away
vzťahov.
from the homeschooling subject. Often when I get questions,
Častokrát, keď dostanem otázky,
people are trying to condense a complex
ľudia sa
situation,
snažia
a complex
nejakú komplexnú situáciu
issue
zložitú
into a few short
tesnať do
words,
pár slov.
and sometimes the question can
Niekedy
warp or slightly distort the actual
tá
situation
otázka
as the person finds
vlastne
it,
nejak tak nepopisuje tú
and
situáciu.
sometimes it can make it appear either softer,
Niekedy to vyzerá, že to
less
je
offensive, or more brutal,
jemnejšie, alebo zase naopak,
which makes it much
horšie,
worse than it really is.
ako to naozaj je.
So you have relationship issues, questions, and the way people
To,
ask
ako
their
sa ľudia
questions,
pýtajú tie
sometimes
otázky,
it may be asked in the
možno,
wrong
že
way. Sometimes it's just the nature of asking the
sa
question
to
itself.
nesprávne pýtajú, alebo je to proste kvôli tomu, tým otázkam,
They can mask the
že
reality
tú
of the
realitu za tým
situation,
úplne
either
nevidno.
making the situation seem far worse than it
Niekedy tá
is,
situácia vyzerá
or
oveľa
less
horšie a niekedy
bad than it is.
vyzerá lepšie, ako v
So it's
skutočnosti
hard
je.
to judge. So I've received a question. It says
Takže tu je
this:
otázka.
I know a brother and a
Poznám brata a
sister
sestru,
that are in
ktorí
the
sú v
movement.
hnutí.
The brother hits his
Ten
wife pretty often.
muž bije svoju manželku. Často.
So is that connected to my question?
Yeah.
One moment.
Where we put godship and headship.
Okay. I know a brother and a sister. They're in the
Takže sú
movement.
obaja v hnutí.
The brother hits his, I presume it's husband and wife,
A
so I'm going to say wife. It says her. The
on
brother
ju
hits his
bije
wife pretty
dosť často.
often, and he still says,
A
that
stále
practices
hovorí,
that he still practices equality
že
in
on
his
praktizuje
family.
rovnosť v rodine.
He enforces a headship model at his
Ale
home.
doma vynúcuje
The
si tú
question is,
nadvládu.
how can I help
Ako im môžem
them?
pomôcť?
So the question is not from the husband
Takže
or the
toto
wife.
nie je od
It's
nikoho z
from
toho
a
páru
friend of theirs. It says
Je
them,
to
so I presume
nejaký
it's a friend of both
kamarát
of them. And
z hnutia.
I don't know if the questioner is a man or a woman, but the questioner
Alebo
is
kamarátka,
asking,
neviem.
how can
A tu je otázka, že
the
ako im
person
môže
help
pomôcť
this
v tejto
situation?
situácii.
So the first thing I want to
Takže prvú vec,
say,
ktorú chcem povedať,
and I've said this
povedal som to
before,
aj predtým,
and people have either taken it
ľudia
the
to
wrong
buď zobrali
way,
zle,
or they've taken it the correct way,
alebo
and
správne
thought that this was
a
very
povedali,
severe
že toto je veľmi vážne.
or too draconian policy. But I'm of the mind that we should have a zero tolerance
Mali by sme mať
policy
nulovú toleranciu
on any and every form of
akékoľvek
abuse,
forme násilia alebo týrania.
whatever that is, whether it's
Či je to
physical,
fyzické,
mental,
mentálne,
emotional,
emocionálne,
or spiritual.
duchovné. Na nešťastie,
Unfortunately, the vast majority, it's
veľká
like
väčšina,
at least an order of magnitude,
naozaj veľká väčšina,
which means times 10, it's almost
takmer
always
vždy
the
je tu
problem
problém
or the fault of the
na
husband or
strane
the
muža
man in
v tých
relationship
vzťahoch,
when it comes to issues of
keď to príde
abuse.
na tému násilia alebo týrania.
And I'm saying that the whole
Ja
premise
hovorím,
should be that we
že
would
ten
have a
predpoklad
zero
náš by mal
tolerance
byť,
policy
že k tomuto máme
on
nulovú
abuse.
toleranciu.
That means as a
Ako
movement,
hnutie,
and that means within
aj
the
v
family
rámci
unit
rodiny
itself.
ako takej.
The children,
Deti,
the mother,
matka
and
aj
the
otec.
father. Everyone should
Všetci si
realize
musia uvedomiť,
all
že
abuse
každé
should
násilie
never,
alebo týranie
be excused,
sa nikdy nesmie
which means it should never
ospravedňovať.
be
ignorovať.
Now, I'm not
Ja
saying,
nehovorím,
which is where people have been
to
confused,
ľudí
I
možno
think,
trošku zmiatlo,
that just because we have zero
že pretože máme
tolerance
nulovú
on abuse,
toleranciu,
that means we would do
to
something
neznamená,
about
že
abuse in
v
every
každej jednej situácii
situation.
niečo s tým budeme robiť.
So I'm not trying to
Takže
say
ja sa nesnažím
that every time
povedať,
someone is
že za
abused,
každým, keď
some
sa stane
action needs to be taken.
nejaké
But
násilie,
what I
treba
am
hneď
saying
konať.
that it should never
Ale
be
ja hovorím, že
ignored,
nikdy to
because
nesmiete
the person
ignorovať.
who's being abused, if they
Ak ten
ignore
človek,
the
ktorý
abuse,
je tá obeť,
what
to
ends up
ignoruje,
happening is that the abused, the person who's on the
ten, kto
receiving
príjma
end,
to násilie
ends
alebo
up
týranie, začne to
justifying
nakoniec
the abuse.
ospravedňovať a hovorí, že
And in
má na to
far too
rôzne
many
dôvody, prečo sa to
situations,
vlastne deje.
the way they justify the abuse
A v príliš veľa
is
situáciách
how.
to ako
And
ospravedňujú.
if anybody's got their own thoughts on this, how is it that they justify the
Ako to
abuse?
ospravedňujú?
From my
V mojej
experience, what
skúsenosti
they
to, čo
do
robia,
is exactly that. They
je,
blame
že obvinujú
themselves.
sami seba.
They justify the abuse
Oni
by saying,
povedia,
perhaps
možno
me,
ja
the
som
wife,
asi
I have been too
som bola
nagging,
príliš
or I
otravná,
have been too
alebo som sa
complaining,
už moc
or I have
ťažovala,
expected too
a veľa
much.
som rozprávala,
So they begin
veľa
to
toho
blame
chcem, začnú viniť
themselves.
same seba.
The person who receives the abuse blames themselves, and then they justify it.
Kto to
That would be like
násilie
saying,
dostáva, to
if
začne
you were
ospravedňovať tým, že sa
black
obviní.
and someone was racist,
Čiže
you'd end up saying,
keby bol
well,
niekto rasista, mali by sme nejakého
sure.
čierneho, tak on by povedal,
the reason
Áno,
they think this
jasné.
way is because I'm
dôvod,
black,
prečo sa tak ku mne chovajú, je,
and
lebo
obviously
som
if I'm
čierny.
black, there must be some
Tak
truth
niečo na to
to this
musí byť,
accusation that I am,
že
that the problem that we're facing
vlastne
is
toto
my
je moja
fault
chyba.
because of how I was born
Takto
or
som sa
constructed or
narodil.
put together. So the color of my skin actually is part of the
Je
problem,
to,
as they
áno,
say
je
it
to
is.
problém,
Now we
akú mám
believe,
farbu pleti.
sorry, we live in the 21st
Ale
century
my
now.
vieme v 21.
and
storočí,
I'm
dúfam,
hoping that over the past
že
20
za posledných
years,
20 rokov,
which is how long we've been in this
tak
century,
dlho sme v tomto
that
storočí,
none of us
dúfam, že nikto z nás
actually thinks
takto
that way.
nerozmýšľa.
And the reason why we would think
Dôvod,
that
prečo by sme
way,
tak rozmýšľať mohli,
I want to
chcem
say,
povedať,
is because we have been
je, že kvôli
manipulated
tomu
or controlled or tricked into
sme
thinking
boli
that.
ako keby takí vmanipulovaní do
Because
tohto
we may
myslenia.
go down that road, but we all know it's inherently wrong.
Ale vieme, že je to nesprávne. Aj keď sme išli po
So,
tejto ceste rozmýšľania.
someone has said that they as a black person have felt that way,
Niekto tu píše, kto sú
they
čierni bratia,
also
že sa takto
know
cítili.
that it's wrong to feel
Ale
that
tiež si
way.
uvedomujú, že to je nesprávne sa
At
tak
least
cítiť.
now I'm hoping they have come
Tak
into
dúfam,
the
že
enlightenment
teraz
that
prežívajú
even
určité
though
osvietenie.
society or their own
Že
upbringing
to ich,
may
že,
have led them
že
in
aj
this
tá ich
direction,
výchova
they
alebo
know it's
skúsenosti
wrong,
ich
and
mohli
so
týmto
therefore they
spôsobom viesť
have to
rozmýšľať.
consciously resist that.
A môžu tomu
And
vedome
so in the same
vzdorovať.
way I'm saying that women
A rovnako
in
ženy vo vzťahoch,
relationships, even though they may go down
aj
that
keď
road,
rozmýšľali týmto
and I'm saying the
spôsobom,
reason they go down that road is because of this
kvôli tomu,
whole
kvôli
idea
tej myšlienke toho
of not understanding how these relationships
neporozumenia, ako
work,
vzťahy majú
that they find
fungovať,
it
tak im to
acceptable to
príde
blame themselves.
priateľné vlastne tam, kde sa nachádzajú.
And as soon as we begin to have this culture of
A
zero
ako náhle
tolerance,
začneme mať
I
túto
think it begins to open the
nulovú
possibility
toleranciu,
that
otvorí to možnosť
women can begin to
tomu,
acknowledge for
že
themselves that it's just an
ženy same
unacceptable
pred sebou priznajú, že toto je nepriateľné.
way of living
Nepriateľný spôsob života.
to be abused at
Na
any
akejkoľvek
level.
úrovni byť
So
týraný
coming
alebo
back to the question,
prežívať
in this
násilie.
situation, in this relationship,
Takže
it
aby
says
som
the
sa
brother
vrátil k tej
hits his
otázke,
wife
kde muž bije svoju manželku
and enforces
a
headship.
vlastne
Now, there are 2
vynúcuje si tú
points. There's the
nadvládu.
enforcement of headship, which I want to say is in the jurisdiction or the domain of the church.
Je to jedna vec a potom je to v rámci cirkvi.
And there's another issue in their relationship, which is he hits his wife, and that is in the jurisdiction of.
Toto spadá.
I want to call it
by som to nazval,
the state or the government.
Do toho má právo zasiahnuť štát alebo vláda.
If this person wants to help
tento človek im chce pomôcť,
what I would
ja by
suggest
som povedal,
he or she does is encourage
že
the
buď by mal
wife
pozbudiť tú
to go to the
manželku, aby
police
išla na políciu
and report her
a toho
husband
muža udať
for beating her up. I don't know
Neviem
why
prečo.
people
Ľudia
automatically don't see that this is the right option and
nechápu,
the
že toto je
obvious
tá
road
správna
to
vec
take.
urobiť.
Why they would think that they should
Prečo si myslia,
be
že by
patient
mali byť
with this
trpezliví
man,
a mať milosť s týmto
why they
mužom.
should consider or have some
Prečo majú s
sympathy
ním mať nejakú
for his
sympatiu,
feelings
že
or
ako
his
sa on
thoughts
cíti a čo prežíva,
or the way he was
že
brought
mal zlé
up,
detstvo.
because all of that
Toto všetko
ends up
nakoniec
justifying
vedie iba k ospravedľovaniu zlého správania.
and I'm hoping that we come to the place
Dúfam, že sme
now
už došli k bodu,
that there cannot be any
že žiadne,
justification
nič z tohto sa
for
ospravedlniť
gross misconduct.
nemôže. Keď sa
And
niekto
whether a person
zle chová k niekomu.
wants to change or not
Tento
change,
človek,
when it comes to this level of abuse,
či sa chce zmeniť alebo nechce zmeniť, ak to je na tejto úrovni
what I
násilia,
would consider the church, you and I, turning a blind
Tak.
eye to such
aby sme si
level of
predtým
abuse
zavreli oči,
is actually
to je,
criminal.
to je kriminalita.
So I would suggest to this friend
Takže ja
that
by som povedal,
either they
že buď
have this
nech tá
sister
sestra, alebo ten,
go
ktorý
to
sa
the
to
police
pýta,
and
to
report her
oznámia
husband to
policii.
them, or go to the man and tell him if he doesn't
Alebo nech idú za tým mužom.
I think the
Nie,
friend should just go
myslím,
to
že
the
treba
police
ísť
if
na
the wife's
políciu.
not prepared to do that, and report to the police what this man is doing.
A povedať, čo sa deje.
I can't see any
Nevidím
reason
žiaden dôvod,
why this person should turn a
prečo
blind
by
eye to
si
this
voči tomu tento priateľ mal zatvárať oči.
situation. So, I don't know if the person is here
Neviem,
listening. I don't know if the
či
couple
ten
is here
človek alebo ten
listening.
pár to počúva,
But either way,
či tak alebo tak,
I think the police should be informed.
treba informovať políciu.
Depending on what country you live
Závisí,
in, the police will
ktorej
take
ste
various
krajiny.
actions. Often, in a family situation, they may just give a
Niekedy
warning,
dajú najprv varovanie,
and that may, hoping that it would be, enough
snáď by to stačilo
warning
to,
for him to stop.
aby ten muž prestal.
If he doesn't
Ak
stop
neprestane,
after the police
ani
are
potom, ako
involved
zasiahne
and
polícia,
a record is taken of the act or the offence, the next course of action is for the woman to leave
tá žena
her
musí odísť
husband.
preč.
So, if the police for whatever reason are unwilling or
Čiže ak tá
unprepared to
polícia
take
napríklad
action
nie je
against the
schopná
husband and
zasiahnuť
continues
alebo
to beat
ochotná,
her, my
ja
counsel is that
hovorím,
she
aby
would
tá žena
she
odišla
should leave him and seek for
a
shelter.
vyhľadala
Again, it depends in which country you live in, but at least
nejaký
in first world countries, you can receive state support from abusive husbands.
vyhľadala
So, someone's asked me a question.
nejaký ukryt.
What about hitting or beating children for the purpose of education?
No a čo teraz ohľadne
that
detí, keď
inappropriate
deťom
as
dáme
well?
na zadok pri výchove?
So, I'm sure we're all familiar with
Som si istý,
I can find the verse. A couple of verses. I'll go to
Pôjdeme
Proverbs chapter 22, verse 15.
do niektorých veršov.
Proverbs 22,
Príslovia
15.
22:15.
Foolishness is bound in the heart of the child,
Bláznostvo je v
but
srdci
the rod of
dieťaťa
correction shall drive it far from
a
him.
palica túto bláznivosť z neho vyženie.
Proverbs 23:13.
23.
Withhold not correction from the child, for if thou beatest him with the rod, he shall not die.
Ak dieťa
Thou shalt
vybiješ
beat him with the
palicou,
rod and deliver his soul
nezomrie,
from
ale
hell.
zachrániš jeho dušu.
The rod and reproof give wisdom, but the child left to himself
dá
bringeth
dieťaťu múdrosť.
his mother to shame.
A potom neprivedie hanbu svojej matke.
So we'll go with those
Takže
ones.
tieto nám stačia.
So these are all verses, of course, that tell you to
Toto
beat
sú
your
verše,
children,
ktoré vám hovoria,
and they'll beat sense into the child, if I can say it
vybiť
that
deti
way.
a oni dostanú rozum.
I don't want, it's not my purpose to trash these
nie je
verses,
tieto verše nejako hodiť do koša,
but I do want to say
ale chcem
that
povedať,
the mechanism of
že
beating
ten
your
mechanizmus
children
bytia detí
is almost
je
entirely
takmer
ineffective.
úplne infekčný.
You have two children. One of them is soft and gentle.
Máme dve deti.
There's no need to
Jedno
beat
je
that
jemné.
child or to give them corporal
Vôbec nie je
punishment
potrebné tieto deti byť,
because they can be
alebo dávať im nejaké
handled
telesné tresty,
with
lebo
words.
dokážu reagovať na slova.
It's much more
A je to
effective.
efektívnejšie.
It's productive of the right
A
result
dostanete
if
správny
you just speak to
výsledok.
them. That's point one. The other type
To
of
druhé
child
dieťa
is a much more stubborn, if I want to call it,
je oveľa
rebellious
také
child.
zdorovitejšie,
And what ends up
tvrdohlavejšie.
happening with that type of a child is that the more you
A čo
beat
sa deje s
them,
týmto dieťaťom je,
the more you actually beat
že čím
stubbornness
viac
into
ho
them.
budete
They
byť, tým
become
viac tvrdohlavejšie
hardened.
bude.
They don't soften.
Neobmekčia sa.
The more that rod hits them,
Čím viac dostávajú,
if I can say it this way, it toughens
tak
them
ich
up,
to
makes them
tak
stronger, and I don't mean more
tak ich
resilient,
to
I mean it makes them
zhrubší,
a harder,
stanú sa tvrdými,
colder,
chladnejší.
more rebellious
vzdorovitejší.
person. So either way, this whole
Celý
principle
tento
of beating
princíp
children
bytia detí,
to try to
aby sme sa
instill
snažili
good and correct habits
v
in
nich
them,
zbudovať správne
I want to say pretty much is
zvyky,
completely
je
ineffective.
neefektívny.
So whatever these verses
Čokoľvek tieto
mean,
verše znamenajú,
however literal
akokoľvek
or poetic we want to take
doslovne
these
alebo
verses,
poeticky chceme zobrať,
when it comes to correction and
keď to
child
príde na
rearing,
výchovu
I think
a
you'll
nápravu
find
detí,
that beating your
zistíme,
children actually is an
že bytie
ineffective
detí je
way of
neefektívny spôsob
disciplining them.
výchovy.
Now, I'm pretty sure I won't be able to find this spirit
Som si
prophecy
istý, že nebudem
quote.
vedieť
but
nájsť teraz ten citát,
Ellen White speaks about
ale Ellen Whiteová
using
hovorí o
corporal
telesných
punishment.
trestoch,
smacking children either with your hand or with a rod, but beating them. And I think sometimes we have this
myslím, že
idea
niekedy
that
máme
she
takú myšlienku toho,
advocates
že ona to ako keby
corporal
obhajuje.
punishment to children. But a long time ago, I came across a passage
Dávnejšie
that
som našiel
spoke about
pasáž,
smacking our children,
ktorá
and she
hovorí
said
o tom,
just doing that once in the
že
child's
niekedy
life
stačí
should be
tomu
sufficient
dieťaťu, aby to zažilo jedenkrát
to
za život,
help
na
them.
to, aby to
And I think that's
pre nich
something
bolo
that people
pomoc.
who,
A myslím si, že toto je niečo,
if I can say it, like or resort to corporal
čo
punishment,
ľudia takto
don't
nevnímajú,
realise that if you
že
were to do it
telesný trest
once
má dieťaťu
should be
stačiť
sufficient
raz za celý život.
in a child's life, and if you find that you have to do it
A
on a
keď
recurring
zistíte, že to
basis
musíte robiť pravidelne, aby
achieve
ste
some
niečo
kind of
dosiahli, nejakú
obedience,
poslušnosť,
you
viete,
know that this is a wrong
že toto je
method.
zlé, toto je zlá metóda.
What it ends up doing is destroying or
To
breaking the child's
zlomí
will.
to vôľu dieťaťa, alebo zničí.
And it's the same method that husbands
To je tá
use
istá
when
metóda,
they beat their
ktorú
wives.
manželi
They
používajú
break their
na
will.
ženy, keď ich bijú,
and they
aby zlomili ich
become
vôľu.
servants or
A
robots,
spravia z nich služobničky,
or-
roboty.
in the words of Ellen White, brute beasts.
Alebo
And I mean
ako,
it in the
ako že
sense,
Ellen
as I
Whiteová,
understand
len
she means
také
it,
zvieratá.
that they lose the
stratia
ability to
schopnosť
think and reason for
rozmýšľať sami
themselves,
za seba.
and they hand over all of
A
that
všetku
responsibility
zodpovednosť
to another
hádžu
person,
na niekoho
the
iného.
person in authority, the person who's doing the beating.
Pravdepodobne na toho, kto ich bije.
Yes, they become slaves.
Stanú sa otrokmi.
So, I'm not sure. So I presume when Sister Eleanor asked the question, she doesn't agree with it, and I agree with the point that you made, Sister Eleanor. They become more aggressive
Tu sestra
towards
hovorí, že
others,
deti sa stávajú
especially their
agresívnejšie.
siblings or their
Hlavne
younger
voči svojim
children.
súrodencom potom.
I do want to make one
A
point
chcem jednu pointu povedať
about weaker children, the younger
o tých
ones. She says
mladších
towards weaker
súrodencoch,
children, so it's not just the younger siblings, but it often is
že sa
that.
stávajú agresívnymi voči mladším
Often
súrodencom.
parents
Rodičia častokrát
have a
majú
child
dieťa
and after a while they feel sorry that they've only
a
got
potom
one
im to
child and
začne
they
byť
want
ľúto, že majú
another
iba jedno
child
dieťa,
to
tak majú
be a
ďalšie,
companion
aby tomu jednému nebolo
to
smutno.
them, so that they don't, so they're not lonely.
Aby sa necítili same.
It's a question that comes up quite
Otázka,
often,
ktorá je dosť často.
and my only comment on that is if that's the reason why
Toto.
parents
A
choose
ja by
to
som
have
len
a
chcel povedať, že
second
ak toto je
child,
dôvod, prečo majú rodičia
they
druhé dieťa,
are creating
ak toto
a
je jediný
trap,
dôvod, tak vytvárajú určitú pascu
for their
pre celú
family. They're
rodinu.
setting up a scenario which almost always will lead to
Takmer vždy to
trouble,
vedie k problémom.
because often
Častokrát
the firstborn child is the one that either destroys or corrupts the secondborn.
to
Not always the
prvorodené
case,
ako
but it
keby
is
to
often
druhorodené
enough
pokazí.
from my experience. And as Sister Alan suggested,
Nie je to vždy tak.
these children tend to become much more aggressive, and they end up mimicking that type of
Ale
control
keď bijeme
to
deti,
others
tak
who are weaker
tie
than themselves.
deti sa stanú agresívne a začnú to napodobňovať a robia potom mladším súrodencom to isté.
Just see if there are any more questions that I could address. Yeah, someone says that they become bullies. I
Oni
think
sami sa
that's
stanú
the same
tyranmi.
thing. Correct. Okay, so I want to summarize
Takže to zhrniem.
this question. The question
Tá
is,
otázka je,
there's a couple and the husband beats his wife
to bola vlastne
and
dvojitá otázka. Jedno je,
enforces
kde
headship in his family, and yet he claims to be in the
kde
movement.
manžel,
I actually don't understand how he can be
manžel
in the
bije ženu
movement.
v tom hnutí.
That is an
Ja nechápem,
oxymoron,
ako on môže byť v hnutí, to je oxymoron.
because he's obviously not in the movement. He doesn't believe what
On určite neverí tomu, čo učíme.
what the movement believes. For him to claim that it's okay to beat his
Keď si
wife
myslí, že je to v poriadku byť
and to
manželkou.
think he's the head of the family, and whilst claiming to believe in the same things that we believe in. So he may be here in body, but he's not here in
Možno je
spirit.
tu telom, ale
And I
nie
don't
duchom.
consider someone like that to be part of the movement.
My
I don't think we actually want people like that in the movement.
takýchto ľudí v hnutí
He'll
ani
be better off
nechceme,
moving on if that's what
lebo
his
zle
position
reprezentujú
is.
to, čo učíme.
I think that she should report him to the authorities.
Mala by ho udať na políciu.
No one should
Toto nesmie
tolerate
nikto
physical
tolerovať.
or corporal punishment from someone else.
Fyzické tresty od niekoho.
And then I just added on to that the fact that we should be, or someone asked the question, I think,
Potom sa
how
tu
we should deal with corporal
niekto ďalej
punishment
pýtal,
or
že čo ohľadne
smacking
telesných
of our children.
trestov pri
It's far
deťoch.
too easy to use some of these quotes from
Je
inspiration
veľmi
to
ľahké používať
justify
niektoré
beating our
citáty na to, aby
children,
sme to ospravedlnili, že to bitie detí je
but
v
it really is
poriadku,
an ineffective method.
ale je to neefektívna metóda.
Society has realized this for a long
Toto
time,
som si uvedomil už dávno.
and therefore, they have banned it in many first
A
world countries.
uvedomili si to
It's
mnohé
actually
vlády,
against the
preto to
law to strike your children.
zakázali v
In
mnohých
fact,
krajinách.
in some countries, if you find a welt, I don't know if people know what a welt is if you smack someone and you get a bump even if you don't scratch them or cut them, just a bump, and if it's discovered,
Keď sa zistí, že
you can be prosecuted for doing that to a
dieťa
child.
bolo nejako bité, že má nejakú modrinu
And
alebo
I'm
nejakú opuchlinu,
sure,
tak
I'm
rodičia sú
certain
za to
that
trestaní.
conservative Christians would find that an offence, an interference
Konzervatívni
by
kresťania sú
the
z tohto
state
pobúrení, že štát takto
in
zasahuje
what
do
they would
výchovy.
consider a legitimate
Oni to považujú za
means
legitímne
of
spôsoby
disciplining,
výchovy,
or they would argue one that is God
že
given
toto
to them.
Boh
They have a
dal
divine right
človeku,
to beat their
aby
children,
mohli byť svoje deti
regardless of what the state
a
says.
ich nemá, a že štát sa do toho nemá pliesť.
I don't know where everybody stands
Ja
on
neviem,
this
aké máte
issue,
na toto
but I've come
názory.
to the place in my
Ja som v mojej
experience
skúsenosti
that I would disagree
prišiel do
with that
bodu, že ja
position.
s týmto názorom nesúhlasím.
So someone asked a question. It's a question that comes up over and
Ďalšia
over
otázka,
again.
ktorá býva veľmi často.
It's a new question. So the time in which we
Ten čas,
live,
v ktorom žijeme,
we know we're in Jacob's
vieme, že
time of
sme v
trouble.
čase Jakobovho
We
súženia,
know we've passed the increase
že
of
už
knowledge.
prešilo vzrast poznania.
We have had the latest presidential election. We are headed at lightning speed
Veľmi rýchlo
to Pentecost.
prichádzame k
to
letniciam,
Panium.
k Paniu.
And barring some kind of crazy civil war in the United States, President Donald Trump has lost the
Prezident
election,
Donald Trump
and he
prehral
will not
voľby,
be the president that takes us into the Sunday law. He's not the last
že on nie je
president.
posledný prezident, neberie nás k
So,
nedeľnému
This
zákonu.
is not a prophetic study that I'm referring to, but I'm only trying to say in the sense of the time in which we
Takže ten
live,
čas, v ktorom žijeme,
the shortness of time.
je
The question
krátky.
is it best for
Otázka
us
je,
to not have
že
children in
či by
this
bolo
time
lepšie teraz
period?
už nemať deti v tomto čase.
And I think people, when they ask
Keď sa
this
ľudia pýtajú
question,
túto otázku,
I don't think it is actually a very good
nemyslím si,
question
že
to
toto je dobrá
ask
otázka
of the timing
na toto časovanie.
Has something happened? I don't know. Oh, it's okay. Sorry, I put something wrong. So, I don't think it's a very good
Nemyslím si,
question.
že to je
It's
dobrá
like saying,
otázka.
is this a wrong time to be
Že,
married?
ako keby, že je to
If
nesprávny čas sa
people
teraz
are
brať.
willing and prepared to
Ak
have
ľudia sú
children,
pripravení na
they
deti
should,
a sú
as
ochotní
in many things
ich
in
mať,
life, count the cost,
spočítajte si tie plusy a
And
minusy,
if
to, čo
they-
vás to bude stať.
are found wanting, then they shouldn't.
A keď
if they're
zistíte, že
found,
nedostačujete na to, čo by ste potrebovali pre
worthy
deti,
to,
tak do
then
toho
they should have
nechoďte.
children. The
Ale
problem with having
keď si myslíte,
children,
že
to me, is
ste
related
na
to
to
the problem
pripravení,
of
tak
being
si
married.
ich majte.
Most of us don't have any
Problém s
experience,
deťmi je taký,
at
ako je aj s
either one.
manželstvom.
and therefore we
Väčšina z
tend
nás ľudí
to
nemá žiadnu skúsenosť.
be bad spouses
A stanú
and
sa
bad
z nás
children for the same
zlí
reason that we had
partneri,
very little experience
pretože nemáme
in
žiadnu
either one of
skúsenosť.
those things. I think the world would call it on-the-job training,
Myslím si, že
which is okay if it's
by to sa vo svete nazvalo, že ideme do
mechanical,
práce, na
physical
ktorú
job, but
nemáme
when it's dealing
žiadne
with people, it becomes very
kvalifikácie.
dangerous that you have to do on-the-job training.
Vlastne
So, I
kvalifikujeme
don't
sa počas
consider
tej práce.
The time in which we
Čas, v
live
ktorom žijeme,
actually has any real bearing upon whether or not we should be having children or not. I think it's based upon
nesúvisí s tým,
whether
že či by
we
sme
are
mali mať deti,
implementing and putting into
alebo nie.
practice the latest truths that we
Ale súvisí
understand,
to s tým, či
and
dokážeme naozaj uviesť
and
do
if
praxe
we're
tú
not,
pravdu, ktorú teraz
then we
rozumieme
should
najnovšie.
perhaps hold back until we
A
are
dokiaľ nie sme
before we
schopní
have children,
praktikovať
that is
tieto
before we got
pravdy,
married.
tak by sme mali
If you find
rozhodnutie mať
yourself in the
deti
place
ešte
where you're
podržať.
already married, then consider how your relationship is functioning, if you believe in true equality, if you have the means to take care of a child,
Keď
if all
viete
those
praktikovať
things are
rovnosť,
yes all the way
môžete
through,
sa o deti
I
postarať.
think the couple need to understand and work out for themselves
Toto sú veci,
whether
ktoré
or not they should have
musí
children.
ten pár si medzi sebou vyriešiť.
Okay, we've moved on to another one. We've
Išli sme
got
do ďalšieho.
one of those, I don't know how to say it,
Máme tu
One of
jednu
those
naozaj
really
veľmi
personal
osobnú otázku.
questions.
Neviem, ako to mám inak povedať. Takže
So
idem na to.
let's go.
Takže
person's
tento
married.
človek je ženatý.
I'm hoping these are real questions from genuine people,
Dúfam,
not
že toto sú skutočné
hypothetical,
otázky, nie
theoretical
hypotetické.
person says,
Tu sa
what if
píše,
I can't
že keď
arouse my
neviem
spouse
zrušiť
during
moju
sex?
ženu počas pohlavného styku.
This is the
Že
husband
manžel
talking
hovorí
about
o
his
svojej
wife.
manželke,
can't
že ju
arouse
nevie
her.
vzrušiť.
He says, can I practice oral sex on her
Môžem
fill
praktikovať
the lack
orálny sex,
that she's experiencing on his part?
nahradiť jej
So
ten
really it's a question
nedostatok.
about, is oral sex
Čiže
an
tu je otázka, že
acceptable
či orálny
practice
sex je priateľný v
in
manželstve.
marriage? I'm pretty sure that if you ask most
Väčšina
conservative
konzervatívnych
Adventists,
adventistov
they would find
by
that
to
an
určite považovali za
unacceptable
niečo nepriateľné.
I've
Ja som
already
už povedal,
said that
že
if you
keď
look
sa
at the
pozriete
dictionary
na slovníkovú
definition of
definíciu
words, the oral sex is actually
orálneho
sodomy.
sexu, to sa nazýva sodomia.
So people who have
Čiže
a
ľudia,
problem
ktorí
with
majú problém s
technical
tou
definition of
technickou
sodomy would have a problem
definíciou
with oral
sodomie,
sex.
by mali problém
And
aj
as
s
soon as you
týmto.
start, I think, realizing the legitimacy of intimacy in all of its various
Ja
ways,
intimitu
and
považujem za legitímnu vo všetkých svojich
finding
formách.
pleasure in that physical experience, that I
Ja
personally don't
osobne
have any
nemám
objection or any
žiadne
reason
nič
why.
proti tomu.
I don't understand why people would have an objection
A
to bringing their partner pleasure, especially
prečo
if they can't be
by som
aroused
mal mať niečo proti tomu, prinašať
for whatever
svojmu
reason,
partnerovi
in a conventional
potešenie.
way.
Zvlášť, keď nemôže
I
sa
would
vzrušiť iným
recommend that
spôsobom.
people in those kind of situations
Ale ja
either
by som
seek some kind of
odporúčil ľuďom v
therapy,
takýchto situáciách,
which can take on different
aby
forms,
vyhľadali
or
nejakú
at least speak openly and frankly
terapiu
to one
a aby
another.
určite
And
boli voči
therapy can
sebe
either be
otvorení.
done through some kind of self-help book,
Tá terapia
or
môže byť aj cez nejakú dobrú knižku
seeing a
alebo
marriage
nejakého
counselor.
manželského poradcu.
I think open and frank discussion,
Úprimná
whilst
diskusia
it's difficult, is
je
really
veľmi
I think
potrebná,
necessary when you find that your partner's not being
keď
fulfilled
neviete naplniť potreby
sexually,
svojho partnera
with intimacy.
sexuálne.
But in principle, the question as it's asked, I don't think there's
Ale
any
nevidím v
problem
tom
in that.
žiaden problém v tomto, ako je daná tá otázka.
Yes, it's all about, it really is
Celé
about
to je o
communication. It's this idea that
komunikácii.
we should be talking and open and see what the
Musíte
problem
vedieť,
is.
v čom ten problém
Because,
naozaj je, pretože veľmi
often,
často,
I'm not saying this question,
ja nehovorím,
the question is
že
saying
to
this,
je tento
often it's
prípad,
not,
ale
not a
väčšinou
mechanical,
to nie je nejaký
physical
mechanický,
problem,
fyzický
it's an
problém, ale
emotional one.
emocionálny.
That's going, not going
Niečo,
well, that's going
niečo tam
wrong.
ide zlým smerom.
Of why his wife isn't being aroused. Maybe he doesn't
Možno
know how to
nevie,
meet
ako
her
naplniť
needs,
tie emocionálne
doesn't know
potreby.
what
Možno
her
ani
needs
nevie,
are,
aké má
and
potreby.
if they don't talk
A
about
keď
it,
sa o
it's
tom
very difficult
nerozprávajú,
to
tak je veľmi
fulfill her
ťažké
needs.
tie potreby
And
naplniť.
often if you can't meet her needs through normal intercourse, oral sex may or may
Keď
not
to
do
nevie
it either.
naplniť tie potreby normálnym stykom, nemusí sa to
So,
stať ani pri tom
Yes, Sister Sophie talks
orálnom
about
sexe.
communication.
Komunikácia
Communication really should be
musí
between
byť
the spouses
naozaj
themselves, but if it doesn't work, sometimes they do need
medzi tými
some
dvoma, ale niekedy potrebujú
intervention, some
nejakú
help from
pomoc
an
zvonku.
outside source.
Môže
Books
byť
can
to
do that
aj kniha, alebo
if a couple aren't able to see
nejaký
a therapist.
terapeut. Ďalšia
So next
otázka.
question. Does a man have
Musí
to have
muž
a
mať
job,
prácu,
his own place,
svoj
and be able to
dom a
provide for
musí
his
vedieť
wife
zabezpečiť
before he enters into
svoju ženu
marriage?
predtým, ako sa ožení? Takže,
So,
neviem,
I
kto
don't
sa
know whose
to
question
pýta.
that is, of course. And obviously, we should all be able to raise with the chorus That's a very
Mali by sme
sexist
všetci povedať,
question,
toto je sexistická
isn't it? So
otázka.
we're all laughing here. The people. Oh, sorry, we're laughing for different reasons. So anyway, we're
sa tu
laughing here.
smieme.
Does the man have to have a job, his own place, and be able to provide for his wife before he enters marriage? So the answer
Odpoveď
is,
je,
does a woman have to have a job, her own
musí
place, and be able to
žena mať
provide for her
svoju
husband
prácu, svoj
before
dom
she
a
enters into marriage? So
musí
we
vedieť
can
zabezpečiť
see,
muža predtým,
I'm
ako sa
hoping,
vydá.
how
Takže vidíme,
sexist the whole framework of this
aká
question is.
sexistická celá táto otázka, ten rámec toho.
So if we take the
Takže
sexism
keď to
part
teraz
out of
dáme nabok,
this,
tento
let's try to address it on
sexizmus,
some
pozrieme sa na
fundamental
nejaký základný
principles.
princíp.
Should a
Mal by
person
človek
be
byť pripravený, čokoľvek
whatever
to
ready
pripravený
means,
znamená
before
už
they
predtým,
marry?
ako sa
I think
oženia,
I would say
vydajú? Ja
yes.
hovorím, že áno.
So
Ale
what does
čo
it
to
mean to
znamená
be
byť
ready?
pripravený?
So does money play a
Zohrávajú v tom
part?
rolu peniaze?
I think
Myslím
yes,
si, že
it
áno.
Does maturity have a part to play?
To, že či
Yes,
sú
it does.
zrelí, áno, to
Does
zohráva
a
rolu.
suitable
Či
location
majú
or
miesto
place
na
to live
bývanie,
have a
má
part
v
to
tom
play in
rolu?
this?
Áno.
Yes. So talks about
Takže sa
a
tu
job. I'm
hovorí
just going to
o
call that a
práci,
career.
mali by mať už
Talks
nejakú
about a
kariéru
place.
rozbehnutú
I'm going to say that's home.
a miesto na
and
bývanie,
money
peniaze
to
na
meet
to, aby
needs.
vedeli
So if we
fungovať.
just spoke about those three
O tomto
things,
sme hovorili.
a
Kariéra,
career,
miesto
a
na
place to
život
live or a home, and sufficient
a dostatočné
financial
finančné
resources
zdroje.
are those
Tieto
criteria
kritéria
that people should have
by mali mať
before they
predtým,
marry.
ako sa zoberú.
And I think in principle,
V princípe si
yes.
myslím, že áno.
whether or not it's one or both of the
Či je
spouses
to
that
jeden
has
alebo
that,
obaja partneri,
would depend
ktorí toto
upon the
majú, to už
situation.
závisí na situácii.
one partner might
Jeden
still
môže
be in
ešte stále byť
education
na škole,
and the other one
druhý
isn't in
nie.
education. They both
Môžu
may be in
obidva byť na škole
education and therefore
a
their
teda
careers are being taken care
už
of,
nejakú tú
their
kariéru majú
accommodation has,
zabezpečenú.
and they're both, depending on which
Závisí
country
aj
you
v
live in,
ktorej
and I
ste
don't know what models
krajine.
you all have, but you're receiving some kind of money
Ale ako
as a
študent
student, whether that's a
môžete
loan or
dostávať
from the
určité
government.
peniaze,
As long as the couple are able to
keď
have a
tento
roof
pár
over
má
their head
strechu nad hlavou
and pay their
a sú
monthly,
schopní
weekly,
platiť
yearly
svoje
expenses,
mesačné a ročné výdavky
just at
na
that
tejto
level,
úrovni, ak to je,
I don't think it's wrong
tak
for
nie
them
je
to
to zle
marry.
sa zobrať.
This idea that a man has to have all of these things in place before he can get on his knee and ask
Teraz
his
nehovoríme o tom, že muž toto všetko musí mať
or his
pohromade
girlfriend for her
predtým, ako
hand.
požiada
I
o
think is
ruku.
obviously an
To už je
outdated sexist
sexistický model.
model. Because the wife
žena
or the woman should
by
also be in
mala
that
byť
same
na tom
place
istom
if we're
mieste,
going to
ak
use that
chceme takto
argument.
argumentovať.
I
Myslím
think
si,
there are
že sú aj
other
iné
criteria
kritériá,
that
ktoré
are
sú potrebné
necessary before
predtým, ako sa
people
ľudia
marry.
zoberú.
And I think we're in a very steep
Myslím, že
learning
sme
curve
vo
as
veľmi
priests on this
prudkej
issue.
takej zákrute, kde sa učíme tieto veci.
And I'm hoping over the past
A dúfam, že
12
za
to 18
posledných 12 až 18 mesiacov
many of the
mnohé z týchto
stereotypical
stereotypických
issues or
problémov a
concerns
obáv
or fears that we have had are beginning
už
to
sú
be raised. And
sú
the
vymazané.
questioner asks about a
On sa tu
job.
pýtal ohľadne práce.
Sometimes people
Niekedy
equate job
ľudia
to money. If you have a job, you can
rovnajú
provide.
prácu s
I
peniazmi.
was steering away from that, even though I think that's what the question, what was in the
Myslím
mind
si,
of
že
the
toto mal
questioner.
na mysli.
I would consider a job
Ale
to
ja
be a
považujem, že
career.
keď má niekto prácu, že
And I
už
think
má
it's
rozbehnutú nejakú
important
kariéru.
for an
Je
individual,
dôležité,
male or
aby ten
female,
človek
to have their
mal už
career choices
nejakú tie pracovné voľby
fulfilled.
naplnené alebo rozbehnuté.
Often they don't know what that career choice is,
Keď sú
especially
mladí,
if they're
častokrát
young,
nevedia, čo to
18,
bude.
19, 20. Sometimes people
Ľudia
go to
niekedy idú na
university
vysokú školu neskôr.
later on, mid-20s, for instance. I think it's
Myslím,
useful
že je
to
užitočné
have your career,
mať
at least
už
your
nejaké
goals
takéto
and your
ciele
desires of where you want to
toho, že
head,
ktorým smerom
already
chceme
in place
ísť.
and set before
Predtým,
you
ako
enter into a
vstúpite do
relationship,
vzťahu
in a serious
vážneho.
relationship with someone.
Je
There are too
príliš
many
veľa
cases where
prípadov,
people
kedy sa
for the
stane,
sake
že
of
kvôli
marriage,
manželstvu
actually
ľudia
put
odložia
their
tú
careers on
kariéru
hold,
niekde na vešiak,
or they are willing to
alebo
forbear pursuing their dreams
nenasledujú tie
for
svoje
the sake
sny
of
kvôli
marriage.
manželstvu.
For instance, they may
Napríklad sa
move
presťahujú,
locality
pretože
because one spouse, and it's often the man,
častokrát
has a
muž
good job
dostane
and they're
nejakú dobrú
willing,
prácu.
or I'm going to say pressurized into
A tá žena
leaving,
ako
the
keby
woman is,
nútená
to leave her
odísť,
job, her career, to
odísť od
move to
svojej
where
práce
the
a ísť s tým
man is.
mužom.
I think those kind of
Toto sú
ideas,
veci,
kind of plans are not
ktoré nie sú zdravé
helpful to a good
pre dobrý
marriage relationship.
vzťah
So
manželský.
besides the career, besides
Čiže okrem tej
the
práce
home, and
rozbehnutej a
besides
kariéry,
finances, there are
okrem
other
domu,
issues
sú
about
tu
truly
aj
understanding
veci, ktoré sú
equality.
potrebné ohľadne skutočného
So,
porozumenia rovnosti.
For the person to ask this question, perhaps they're not
Ten,
actually
kto
ready
sa to
to
pýta,
marry
asi ešte nie je
because they
pripravený sa
framed this in
ženiť.
the context of a man. But maybe that's just the way that they frame the question because they're a man themselves and they want
Možno
to
sa to len pýta,
just
lebo on
ask it
sám je
from
mužom,
a
ale to, ako sa to
personal level.
pýta, si myslím, že možno to myslel inak.
Okay, someone's recommended we go to brides.com. I don't know what that is. No promoting other websites, please. I thought going on your knee was so romantic. Wait, I like that. Wait until you're 55, someone says. I know we got the number 55 from. I'm hoping that's a doubling there, not targeting any individual.
Že počkajte, kým budete mať 55.
On a serious
Dúfam,
note,
že tým nemyslíte
people
nikoho
talk about waiting till you're
konkrétneho.
55, but there are many
Je mnoho ľudí,
55-year-olds in
ktorí
our
majú
movement
55
who are completely in a world
a
of their own,
žijú si vo svojom svete
and they
a
would not
neboli by
make
z nich dobrí
fit
partneri.
spouses. I know many,
A poznám
I'm going to halve that in a
mnohých,
bit,
ktorí majú
many
25
25-year-olds who have got their
a
heads on
vedia, čo
straight
chcú
and are
a sú
more
viac
than
ako
ready,
pripravení
more
a
than
sú veľmi
mature
zrelí
enough
na
to marry
manželstvo.
less than half that age. Yep, maturity in social, moral
Tá
and physical.
zrelosť musí byť sociálna,
Physical maturity
morálna aj
comes around
fyzická.
21,
To
22,
prichádza tak
depending on how we count. 18 is
20, po
most people
20,
are not physically mature at 18, I don't think, especially men.
ale určite neskôr, hlavne muži.
Most men are not mentally mature at 18 either. Okay, so
Niekto sa tu
someone's
pýta
asked the
otázku.
question, I think. If an unmarried couple has regular sexual intercourse
je
and
tu
has difficulties to stop,
mladý
what
pár,
should
ktorý
they
nie je
do?
zobratý a spolu spávajú a nevedia s tým
Marry.
prestať. Čo máme
Quickly,
robiť? Rýchlo sa
or
zoberte,
they get into trouble.
ináč sa dostanete do problémov.
If you
Ak
have
máte
difficulty
problémy sa
controlling your
ovládať
sexual
tieto
desires,
svoje sexuálne túžby,
I think you're entering into a
myslím,
really
že bežíte
dangerous place.
naozaj
I
do
say that flippantly, to marry quickly.
nebezpečného miesta. Ja som povedal, že vezmite sa rýchlo.
Whatever happens, I think you're in a very,
Akokoľvek to
very
skončí,
dangerous
toto je
place.
nebezpečná
Because if you marry
pozícia,
because you can't
pretože
contain yourselves, you can't restrain, it's really not a
ak
good
sa
reason
vezmete
to
len
marry.
preto, že sa neviete ovládať, to
And
nie je dobrý dôvod na
If
svadbu.
you're having
Ak
regular
pravidelne
intercourse
spolu spávate a
and
nie
you're
ste
not married,
zobratí,
the question I would want to ask
otázka
the
je,
couple is
prečo
why
to
are they
robíte?
doing that? Can diet influence
Či-
sexual desires? Not
či
to the
môže
degree as
životospráva mať vplyv na tieto
whoever
sexuálne
light is.
túžby.
Oh, sorry, that was a private question. Sorry, I got a question. I didn't know. Sorry, whoever that question was. Diet can influence sexual desires.
Životospráva
Hardly any.
takmer vôbec to neovplyvní.
It may
Malý
have a
dopad to
small
má,
difference. I don't think
ale
eggs are
nemyslím
going to
si,
actually affect someone's
že to
sexual
či ješ alebo
desires
nie ješ vajíčka
that
bude mať
much.
veľký dopad na
But we can agree to
tvoje
disagree.
sexuálne túžby.
And I don't think
A
meat
meso
does either,
tiež
to
nie,
be honest.
ak mám byť úprimný.
In fact,
Ja
I
som
heard
počul
research
výskum,
that says vegan men have the
ktorý
highest
vraj hovorí,
testosterone levels,
muži,
which means that they're
ktorí
more
sú
virile.
vegáni, majú vyšší testosterón.
So that should be recommendations for any women who are looking for men. Look for a vegan man to be a real
Ako
man.
odporúčanie pre ženy. Ak chcete skutočného muža,
Okay, so enough of
zoberte si
that.
vegána. No dobre, stačí
So I
týchto
I
vecí.
think diet can have an impact. I'm not
Nehovorím, že
denying
by
Ellen White's
strava
quotes that
nemala
talk about
dopad,
this, but I think some of those quotes,
ale niektoré tie citáty, viem, ktoré myslíte od sestry Whiteovej.
I just think they're a product
Myslím,
of
že
the
sú
generation
produktom
in which
generácie,
Ellen
v
White was
ktorej ona
living
sama
from the
žila.
Victorian age. I think she took
Ona
some
nejaké
baggage
bremeno
from that.
si niesla tej
We've
svojej
discussed
doby.
this issue already. So a man or a spouse or a woman, they don't have to have everything in place.
Takže
It depends upon everyone's unique situation. But it's good to have your life
je
goals
dobré mať
in
už tie
place.
životné ciele
I
nejako
think it's a good
také
idea for
usporiadané.
to have their
Svoje
career and
pracovné
the educational
zameranie,
dreams
vaše sny ohľadne
in place.
vzdelania.
that they're not
Toto by
stolen from them.
manželstvo
I think
nemalo
that's
ľuďom
what
ukradnúť.
really I find fearful is that far too many people
Ľudia
have a
majú
dream
sen,
for a
nejaké
career.
kariéry,
They find someone
potom niekoho
and they
stretnú
say that they'll
a
put
oni
those
to
dreams on
odložia
hold and they end up
a
never
nikdy ich
materializing. I think
neuskutočnia. A
that is
myslím
not
si,
a
že
good
toto nie je
place to
dobré.
be. I think
To
that's
je
more
dôležité.
important than the money
Dôležitejšie
side of
ako
things.
to,
although
či
I'm
majú
not
dosť peňazí
negating how
pri tom,
important
keď
that
sa
is.
idú brať.
And the next one will be someone says, I don't know who's so funny. I don't know if I'm funny or someone else is funny. Perhaps I'm the one who's funny. Someone because okay, yeah. So someone makes an important point.
Takže
You're in a
ďalšia vec,
relationship,
sme vo
courtship,
vzťahu,
pre-courtship, whatever, and you do something wrong. You
spravíme tu
make
nejaké
some
chyby.
mistakes. Maybe you sleep. Maybe you do something wrong. I don't think
Nemyslím
that's
si,
a good grounds
že
for marriage. As I
toto
said,
je dobrý základ pre
someone was saying
manželstvo.
that they're habitually having
napríklad
intercourse with one another. And I
keď
said, well, you
niekto
get married quickly. Obviously, I was only
pravidelný
being flippant when I
pohlavný
said that.
styk. Ja
That
som
was
povedal
not meant to
rýchlo
be
sa
taken
vezmite,
as
ale to som
advice.
nemyslel ako radu, to som povedal tak hlúpo.
Bad
Zlé
mistakes
chyby
in
vo
a
vzťahu pred
relationship before
manželstvom
marriage shouldn't be the driver
nesmú byť
to marry,
nejakým
whether
pohoničom
it's
k manželstvu.
embarrassment, shame, even
Dokonca aj
pregnancy.
tehotenstvo.
I'm not
Nie,
persuaded
myslím
is
si, že
a
toto
good
je dobrá motivácia
motivation for
pre
marrying
svadbu.
someone. Just
Pretože
because you make
spravíte chyby,
mistakes, I don't think we should
nemyslím, že by ste
double
ich
the
mali
most
ešte
those mistakes by
znásobovať.
marrying someone that we are
Tým,
ill
že si
suited
vezmete
to.
niekoho, s kým sa nehodíte.
Especially if we don't feel comfortable in and of ourselves to do that, regardless of people around us counseling us not to marry. If
Čiže
you
ak sa
find yourself
nachádzate
in
v
a
takéto
difficult
zložitej
situation,
situácii,
I don't
ja
recommend that marriage
neodporúčam manželstvo
is
ako
the panacea to
nejakú
all your
pilulku
solutions. In fact,
na tú zlú
it just
situáciu.
makes
To vec len
things
zhorší.
worse. If things are not
Ak
right,
veci sú
marriage will
v
make those
zlom
things
stave,
worse.
manželstvo ich zhorší.
I agree with the comments that's made. If things are going wrong in your
Ak
premarital
veci idú zlým
relationship,
smerom
marriage won't
v
fix
rámci
those
chodenia,
mistakes.
manželstvo
Correct
to
them
nenapraví.
beforehand or
Buď
break off
to
from the
napravte ešte
relationship.
pred manželstvom, alebo ten vzťah ukončite.
So, I think I'm
Dobre,
going
tu
to stop
by som
here.
skončil.
We've been going for a good hour and a half.
Už máme za sebou hodinu a pol.
The
Ďalšia
next
otázka.
question is a bit more involved, so I think it's best if
Je
I
taká
stop there.
širšia,
I'm
takže tu
hoping
by
that
som
everybody
skončil.
has found some
Dúfam,
enjoyment,
že
some
ste z
benefit
toho mali nejaký
in our
užitok.
discussion. So what we've spoken about
Takže to, čo sme
in
dnes
today's,
hovorili v tých otázkach
question
a
and answer
odpovediach,
is the connection
je
between
prepojenie
the
medzi
apis
Bikom
bull,
a Pis,
the headship sexist
medzi tým
model,
modelom
and
vodcovstva
the problems
sexistickým
with conservative
a
Christian
problém s konzervatívnym
homeschooling.
kresťanským
thoughts and ideas.
školstvom domácim.
We've spoken about
Hovorili sme o
abuse
týraní v
in marriage
manželstve
and how we should
a o
have
tom,
a
že
zero
voči tomuto
tolerance
máme mať nulovú
policy.
toleranciu.
And what that means is
To znamená,
always
že vždy
acknowledge
si to
it.
musíme priznať, čo
Sometimes
sa
we
deje.
take actions
A niekedy
on
musíme
certain
na to
forms of
reagovať a
and
nejaký,
what's at other times we may
vyvodiť
just
z toho
have to
následky.
put up with it, hoping that
Ten
things will
človek,
change.
alebo tá
If
žena sa s tým
you
nesmie iba nejako zmieriť a
beat
dúfať,
your
že to
wife,
prejde.
I think
Ak,
the civil
ak niekto bije
authorities should be
ženu,
involved in situations
tam
such
musia
as
sa
that.
do toho
We've spoken
zahrnúť
about
aj
corporal
vlastne
punishment
autority
with respect to our
občianske.
children and how damaging that can be.
To je ničivé pre zdravie.
We've spoken about
Hovorili
the
sme
problem
o
that many
probléme,
women
ktorému
face,
čelí mnoho žien.
that they find it
A to je to,
hard
že
to be
nevedia
aroused
vlastne nájsť
during
potešenie
intimacy.
alebo vzrušenie v
And
intimnom živote.
Far too many times,
Príliš
I
veľakrát
think it's considered as either a problem on their part,
si myslia, že oni majú nejaký
however
problém,
people would describe it, or something
alebo že
physically
majú
that's wrong
fyzický
with them.
problém.
And I think
A
what people would find that the
skutočná
real cause
príčina
of their
tohto problému
problem is
je
lack of
nedostatok
communication.
komunikácie.
That the
Že
husband is actually
manžel
not meeting the
vlastne
needs
nenaplňa potreby
of
tej
his
svojej
wife.
ženy.
Having said that, I believe
Verím, že
research
výskum
teaches
učí,
that generally, and not everyone is the same, it's much harder for women to
že pre
achieve
ženy je oveľa ťažšie
orgasm
dosiahnuť
than it is
orgazmus
for a
ako pre
man.
muža.
But again, that is
Ale
I think
toto
more often due to
je
lack of
skôr kvôli nedostatku
communication, both
verbálnej
verbal and
komunikácie,
physical
nie kvôli
communication
nedostatku fyzickej
between the
komunikácie.
couple, as opposed to a
To nie je
mechanical
mechanický
problem
problém.
with women. So I think
Myslím si, že
communication
komunikácia
is
je potrebná
necessary, and sometimes
a niekedy je
intervention.
potrebný aj
is helpful.
zásah tretej strany.
We then
Potom
spoke
sme
about
hovorili o
the
tých
requirements
požiadavkách
or the prerequisites
na to,
for
že
being married,
čo ľudia potrebujú, aby sa už mohli
and
brať.
this idea that a person
Tá
has to
myšlienka
have
toho,
a
že musia
steady
mať
job, has
stabilnú
to have their
prácu,
own home,
nejaký
has
domov,
to be able to provide.
musia vedieť sa
First of all,
postarať.
this is not a
Toto už
man's
nie
world
je len
anymore.
záležitosť muža.
And
A za druhé,
secondly, I think it's really
myslím si, že je to
helpful
naozaj
if
užitočné,
both
keď obaja
spouses have
majú
direction,
takú, majú už
personal
vlastný
conviction of
smer
where they
toho,
want to
že ktorým
head
smerom chcú ísť v
in
živote.
life. And there
Je
are far
príliš
too
veľa
many
situácií,
situations where, and it
kedy
tends to be this way,
tak
where
to
women
je, že
give
žena
up
sa
their
vzdá
careers
svojej kariéry,
to be
aby bola
and I
vydatá.
just don't think it's a very
A myslím, že toto
good
nie je
plan.
dobrý plán.
Current situations that have been in the news
To, čo bolo v
recently
správach v
are the two
nedávnych
Supreme
časoch,
Court judges,
to boli
Judge Ginsburg
sudkynia
and
Ginsburg a
Judge
Barrett.
Barrett, both of whom
To sú
were
sudkyne
successful
Najvyššieho súdu.
lawyers
Oni
and then
obe boli
judges,
úspešné
both
právničky,
of them
sudkyne,
were supported in
a
their
ich
career
manželia
choices
ich
whilst being
podporovali
married
v tejto
and
kariére
also
a
whilst
mali
having
pritom aj
children.
deti.
And in those
týchto
particular
situáciách
situations, the reason why they were
dôvod, prečo boli
successful
úspešné,
is
je,
that
že
their
ich vzdelanie
education, their career
a
progression
ich rast
continued
kariérny
not only
pokračoval
after marriage but also after
nielen v manželstve,
childbearing.
ale aj v rámci
And I
materstva.
think those things are as
Tieto veci
important, if
sú
not more
veľmi
important,
dôležité.
than just
Ale to je
having a job.
dôležitejšie, ako len mať prácu.
So I hope I've
Dúfam, že toto som
answered those
zodpovedal.
questions to people's satisfaction.
Poďme sa
Let's close with
pomodliť.
prayer.
Drahý
Heavenly
nebeský
Father, we
Otče,
want to
ďakujeme
thank
Ti
you
za
for
Tvoju
your goodness
dobrotu a
and your mercy.
milosť.
Lord, I know
Pane,
we
ja viem,
talk
že
in a general
rozprávame
manner
všeobecne,
and sometimes in a
niekedy to
light
tak
way,
zľahčujeme,
but these questions
ale tieto
are
otázky
real
sú
life
skutočné otázky
questions.
života
questions being asked by
ľudí,
people who often
ktorí
are in
trpia,
pain
ktorí majú
or in
bolesti,
need of help and support.
potrebujú nejakú pomoc.
Father, we
Tak sa
bow
skláňame
before
pred
you
Tebou
and we
a prosíme
petition
ťa
all
za
those
všetkých
people
týchto
who
ľudí,
have had
ktorí
these
tieto otázky
questions,
majú.
whether they seem
Možno nám sa
trivial
zdajú
to us
triviálne,
or whether we recognize that they are
ale sú
severe and
dôležité
important.
a
We
vážne.
place all of
A
those
tak
names, even
nevieme,
though
kto
we
to
don't
píše,
know them.
ale všetkých týchto
before
ľudí
you, Lord.
umiestňujeme pred Teba.
And also as we
ako to
consider those
zvažujeme,
names, not only as we place them before you to do your good will in their lives, we also ask you to show
prosíme
us
ťa, aby si nám ukázal,
what our part is, the things that we have done or said that are wrong,
čo na našej
but
strane je
moving
zlé,
forward, how we can support and help
aby si
these people.
pomohol týmto
Please help
ľuďom.
us, Father,
Pomôž
as
nám,
we
Pane,
are
keď
now
sme
in the
teraz v
upper room
skúsenosti hornej
experience
miestnosti,
to
aby sme sa
press together,
spolu zjednotili,
become close to one
boli
another.
si blízki.
Help us to be directed by our innate humanity and also the meditation and study of your word and the
Veď
conviction
nás
of the Holy
prosíme pri
Spirit
štúdiu a
to do that
usvedčovaním
which is
Tvojho
right
ducha,
and not that
aby
which is
sme
wrong.
videli, čo je zlé.
Help each of us, Father, to
Pomôž
stand
nám
up
povstať
and to
a
be
byť
brave and to
odvážni,
be
aby sme mohli
counted,
byť počítaní,
what is
boli
right.
medzi tými, čo robia to, čo je správne.
pray for a special blessing upon the
Prosím
sister
si
that is
požehnanie
experiencing violence
za
in
tú
her
sestru,
family.
ktorá zažíva násilie.
Please
Prosím, pomôž
help
jej
her and
a
convict those
usvedč tých,
people
ktorí
who
sú
are
okolo
around
nej
her
a
who
vedia
know
o
what's
tom,
happening to shield
aby
and
ju
protect her.
ochránili. Buď s
Be
nami
with us,
a
be
tiež
with
s
her, we
ňou v
pray in
mene
Jesus'
Ježiša.
name.
Amen.